All right. It's the middle of the hour, and this is the Trampled Underfoot podcast show with your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo. We'd like to welcome you all back. We have some news to get through. Blah, 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 blah. What's going on, Mark?
Oh man, just working too hard, and we were talking about it back in the green room. Too many projects going on at once, especially out in the yard and what have you. But I'm finally starting to. Uh, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I don't think it's a train. So I just want to get it to the point to where I can enjoy it, and I don't have to build it anymore. And I'm getting closer to that point. So, man,
Well,
it's been a long climb. It's been a hard climb.
this life ain't been an easy one, I'll tell you. However, it could have been harder. Well, we don't know now. We can't really say, but
Well,
there's always worse.
yeah, oh yes, definitely. I mean, what was it? The man said, "Life ain't easy and nothing comes free." So, hey, got to do it to survive, and that's what we're doing. So,
Yeah.
but it's okay. It's. I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. It's just sometimes. Have you ever had a project like that where you just wanted to get to the end?
All the
You know,
freaking time.
it's
Every time I
not
start a project.
it's not super difficult, and it sounds really simple. 3 steps, but each step is a lot of labor.
Yes,
You
each
know,
step is a and strategy. Depending on what you're doing, there's also collating the steps that you will take first, second, and then you
Mhm.
have to rethink when something becomes an obstruction. I mean, the problem with being older than you were before is that you realize more how complicated even simple things, and
Yeah,
maybe that hinders. I think that hinders me a lot in many things because I look at the lay of the land and then I think to myself all the things that could possibly go wrong or that one has to address. And then once you see that, because when you're young, you're like A to B. I'm going all the way to B, and you're not considering all the things you have to tackle, and you just do it. So there
yeah,
is a benefit to being not aware.
and it's youthful energy as well. I don't know how I did stuff I used to do. Today, I look back on it like, God, I used to do this, that, and the other. Not anymore, cowpoke, not this one. And it amazes me some of the stuff I used to do. Simple things. Pick up a piece of plywood and move it. Now I don't want to touch it. I used to do that all day, every day at work. I can't tell you how many pieces of plywood, full size sheets of 3/4 inch hardwood plywood I picked up and ran through a table saw for 8 hours a day,
I can tell
five
you how
days a week.
I can tell
I,
you how to get that back. What you do is you get a toothpick and you toss it in the middle of the hall. Then you walk over to it the first day. You walk over to it and you just look at the toothpick and then you walk away. Leave it where it's at. The next day, you slightly bend until you feel uncomfortable, then you lift up. Now, after 3 or 4 months of that, once you finally have, and you don't want to exert yourself, you finally can actually bend over, and because you're working, and you can finally pick up the toothpick, then you have crossed the Rubicon of that effort and you can go over to some sort of bigger item. And then in 20 years from now, you have returned to full scale 25-year-old activity.
well, you're assuming I want to do that because I don't want to pick up plywood anymore. That as far as toothpicks are concerned, I figure I've got it. Why throw it? I might lose it. No, put it right there where I can find that again. Um, but I think probably the worst part of all of this is
I can tell you what that
it's
one
it's
is.
it's a learning process.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that at this age you would still be learning this stuff, but there's new stuff to learn every day because, I've never been this old before. So all this is new to me. So I don't know what I can't do until I go to do that. And then my body says, nah. And so I spend a lot of time going, damn, I can't do that no more. So it's it's always a learning experience, man. And it sucks. But what I have is I have a terminal case, what we call a terminal case of the butt firsts, because it goes something like this. I have a shed out to the side of my driveway that I need to move about 38 feet down the driveway, further down the driveway. But first, I've got to get some gravel laid out there to put that shed onto. But first, I got to go get road fabric so I can lay that down, put the gravel on it, so I don't lose all that gravel I'm buying down into the mud. But first, I got to get back there and I got to demolish another shed. But first, I got to move everything. So it's just an endless chain that's going to finally lead up to me moving this shed so I can have more gravel delivered to lay in the driveway, you know?
Yeah.
And
Everything is butt first. I mean, that's how you
Mhm.
sit in the toilet. That's how you sit in a chair. So it's always butt first. I think that
Yep.
that's a good rule. Butt
Yeah.
first.
Unless you're diving off the high dive, then you don't want to do that.
No.
I think we need to do a subject change with that mental image burned into our brains.
Well, I switched
Uh,
the butt. I switched the butts.
yeah, I know, but that's all right. But I don't even remember what it was earlier today that got me onto a nostalgia thing in my brain. And okay, do you remember as a kid thinking to yourself, damn, I wish I was a grown up. Damn, I wish I was an adult. Damn, I wish I was grown up.
No,
You
not much.
don't really remember?
I never. Well, maybe one time when I saw all the street kids, the older ones, walking with these, like Sweetwater was a small place. I'll just say it quick. Sweetwater was not, and it wasn't it wasn't a big place, and so there wasn't a lot of people except the people you saw around. But one time they were all going to the fair, and the older kids, the rock and rollers, were walking down the street, and all of a sudden they had all these girls around them, and we were little kids, and we were looking, and there's these girls with like voluptuous walking in their rock and roll shirts, and we're like, holy smoke, like
Mhm.
the Goonies or something, those kids like they look at the older girls, and we were like, holy, I mean, they were walking I mean, they looked
Well,
like it looked like oases in the middle of just
of-
they gleamed. They were like, oh, I mean, and walking with these rock and rollers and stuff. So then I thought, man, if we were older, but
yeah.
yeah,
But I mean, simple things like you could stay out later, or you could, you and your friends could go down to whatever store or something like that, places you weren't supposed to go.
yeah,
I can remember, wishing it, dang, I wish I was older. I could stay out later and this, that, and the other. I asked that question to lead up to this question. Do you remember either the moment or the first time you thought, damn, I am an adult? Now I got to get my act together. Damn, I am a grown up.
neither.
Neither?
No, because just quickly,
Mhm,
um, maybe I'm kind of a weird case.
mhm.
I see reality all upside down or all different. I don't have those markers. Well, I have notions of those markers, but I never really, because I've always seen life
Mhm.
as some sort of, I don't know, man. It's weird to see like a movie unfolding, and you're an observer on a hill,
Yeah.
and you're observing and you're interacting, but at the end of the day, you're like an observer. And so I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. I can't answer that. No, not necessarily. Although I know what you're saying,
With
but
me, it was right after high school, because then all of a sudden the harsh reality of this is life hit me, you know. Um I have got to get a job. I've got to start paying my own bills. I'm not going to have mom and dad there to backstop me anymore. I've got to learn how to be an adult, and I got to learn how to do that now. Otherwise, I'm really going to be in a world of hurt. And it was a harsh reality to face, because you figure you spend the first 18 years of your life in school, and you think, because you don't know any different, you think that's all the world is. And the school year seemed like it took forever. Well, when you're 10 years old, a school year is roughly 1/10 of your life. So you've got nothing really to balance it against. And
Yeah.
that's all you know. But the minute you're out of school, suddenly you've got some harsh realities to face. And that hit me hard. It was like, oh no, this is for real now. This is not something that I can, go explore a little bit and then come home from. I've got to go out and make me a home now. And that was kind of a intimidating thing to contemplate.
It's different with Cuban families in a way.
Hmm.
The notion of you always hear it growing up, and it's a weird thing. So you're in a Cuban family,
Hmm.
you know, and this go and this seems to hold true through all of the Hispanic, culture,
Uh-huh.
whatever the at least it appears of what I've seen.
Hmm.
So I don't know firsthand from other, groups of people, be it Mexican families or whatnot, Puerto Rican
Okay.
families, Nicaraguan families. I do have notions of that, so I know. We don't necessarily, traditionally speaking, there's not a sense of urgency in terms of they want the family to stay together.
Okay.
Um, Obviously, I mean, we're not like anthropologists here looking at some ancient culture that
Right.
was pulled out of rock, but there is a difference between um, your standard, like let's say Anglo-Saxon
Hmm.
lifestyle, culture, tradition,
Hmm.
where it seems that in the Hispanic, like I was never told like get your stuff ready because you're out of or stuff. I'm not saying
Yeah,
that that's what
I
you,
wasn't either, but just to make that plain, I wasn't either.
but there's a due to the culture in America, there's a sense of once you're 18, you're 1 foot out the door, get your life ready, you're working towards it.
Yeah, independent.
Within the Cuban culture and growing up, remember growing up, you know, first generation American, you don't know other than knowing it that you're
Hmm.
first generation American because you've consumed the culture so
Hmm.
that you're basically so you're basically American. So you're consuming
Hmm.
throughout your lifetime that um, I don't want to say that the word is not indoctrination, but that learning. I don't know what the correct word would be. Education, let's say, or cultural. So you're aware of it. I was aware of the process,
Hmm.
but there was no insistence in
Yeah.
exiting or anything. Like I did it on my own, so I
Yeah.
did do that,
Right.
which is funny too. But in many cases, like I did that, but then again, I was also compelled to due to circumstances that my family they passed away and whatnot, and
Hmm.
so I ended up, you know, but and I came back.
Yeah.
Now I'm the only one here. So you know, but so there is that difference. So many people just stick around, and there's not that necessarily that sense of
Well,
urgency.
there was a lot of that too. There was never any pressure to get out, but there was always, and I don't know how you would put it either. I would say I just kind of absorbed it. I was never, educated or indoctrinated or anything like that, but there was always a sense of independence, of wanting independence, to want to be able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And that's why it was important to every one of my friends and everybody I knew that when you turned 16, you worked your butt off to get your driver's license, because that was a symbol of independence. I can come and go. I don't have to rely on mom or dad to give me a ride to the store. I can go to the store. If I want to take a girl to the movies, yes, I had to ask so I could stay out late and this, that, and the other. Um, but I didn't rely on mom or dad to pick us up and take us here and drop her off and do all that other stuff. I was independent.
Yeah.
And getting out from under mom and dad's roof, I was never pressured into that, but I wanted to get out from under mom and dad's roof, to be out on my own, to be independent, you know, and then start looking at adult things, raise a family, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but I do know people who were, maybe their situation wasn't identical to you, but in very similar situations where they stayed around, and we stayed around at first, but then our economic situation here, the economy just really went south here, and a lot of people moved out, and we were some of those people. We just left the valley to look for greener pastures, but a lot of people stayed. And you still have families up 2 or 3 or 4 generations that live within blocks of one another, if not back in the same house, multi-generational households.
Yeah.
So, but okay, I just wondered if there was any one particular moment where that realization hit you that, holy cow, I'm grown up. Now what do I do?
No, it's because, well, so I mean, I lost my mom at like 20 something years of age,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to deal with that
Mm-hmm.
on its own. Deal with that and the realization of, the future is not granted to you. So since
Yeah.
I was 20, 23, 24 years old, I had that, um,
Mm-hmm.
placed into my life, and with that, and the way I am, due to just growing up and how whatever my mind thinks and my emotional, with that, I got a sense of the futility
Mm-hmm.
of landmarks in life.
Yeah.
um Not that they're not important,
Right. I get it.
but but if anything can be taken at any given moment,
Mm-hmm.
um and you forget these things too, because we're human beings. So the importance of these things, I guess I don't know where I'm going with that, but the point is that since that was a shock
Yeah.
that deviated from maybe another reality that could have been in my way of thinking, it
Mm-hmm.
affected my way of thinking about what's important, what's not important,
Yeah.
and it really screwed up a timeline for me.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, in that way it screwed up a timeline for me,
Okay.
of life, because that
Made
was
you
very, yeah.
made you change your priorities?
um it's a mixture of trying to ignore or forget while still having it in mind. How does one deal with this? It was really a screwed up thing to have that happen and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So that screws up your, or at least in my case, I mean, who can accept
Yeah.
that or deal with that at 23 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, your parents are, everything.
Yeah.
And in fact, to this
Yeah.
day, they don't leave my mind at all. So
Well, if
so
it's any consolation to you, they're not supposed to. So,
but whereas,
mhm.
right, I agree, but whereas if this progression of life, this natural progression of life, where parents, um, go at a certain age, that's
Uh-huh.
roughly the, the average age where that should happen. In theory, you
Right.
know, a, a person has X amount of time with their loved ones to be selfish on the possibilities of reality that are very strong to process. So if a person has their parents with them for an extended period of time, they're, I don't want to say sheltered, because there's people that go off to war and have their parents at home and stuff. But the fact that you have your parents, it's a cocoon, shelter of reality. Because anytime anything ever happened, I ran to my mom or my dad, and not to have that
Well,
at a very early age. And I'm not complaining. I'm just analyzing out loud and
well,
sharing.
you've got a voice of experience there that you can draw from, because I did the same thing up into my 50s. I would talk to my father. We'd get on
Yeah.
the phone and we'd be on the phone with each other for 2 hours just talking about life, the universe, and everything, like you and I do. But I was trying to draw opinions and advice out of him. He didn't like direct questions. You had to kind of sneak up on it and then get him talking, and then you would finally get the answer that you were, seeking. So, not the one you were looking for necessarily, but you would get an answer from him. And so, yeah, I completely understand, I fully understand. And to have that taken at a young age, I mean, there went, you know, a support system,
And an
basically.
innocence, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's a loss of innocence. So whereas in the general course of a lifetime, the average person, in theory,
Mhm.
or what one would think is normal within an extraordinary life that we exist at all. I mean, just if you ponder these things, you would have your parents with you into your adulthood,
Mhm.
into the point where you're starting to gray and stuff. You still have your parents, in theory.
Yeah.
You would have that, and the lo- having that, for a person that has that, it's normal.
Yeah.
They don't think twice about it until it happens at that stage in life, and then it kicks in with
Right.
certain realities of life for that adult human being. That,
Mhm.
wow, my parents have just gone now, and I'm pretty,
Yeah.
up there in age, and this is reality. Well, that kicked in for me at 23 years of age.
Yeah. And most folks, when they're at that age, are contemplating the passing of a grandparent, not a
Right.
parent. So, yeah, I can see where that come from. Well, though, I didn't mean to drag up, bad feelings or anything like that,
No,
or
no, no. I'm
anything.
look. I'm
I
as
was I was
I'm as
shooting more for the nostalgia side of the thing, or.
I'm as a matter of fact with it. I know it's heavy, but I'm more as a matter of fact with it. And we only get one that we know of, one roll of the dice here. So I'm being upfront with it. But the saving grace, this is where what your question brought, where it took me. So I'm going to
No,
go
that's
with it.
fine.
The saving grace is that, which we've talked about before, is this appreciation of. So you know I would not exist if
Mhm.
it weren't for all the circumstances and the people that got together for me to exist.
Yeah.
And because of that, I can't help to feel appreciative of this life. I know we've talked about it before, but the more you say it,
Yeah.
the better, because it's I think, um, in the complex world that we live in, and how we are complex ourselves and contradictory, I think it's good to always set a little, at least for me, a little reminder. Why not say it out loud?
Mhm.
I am appreciative regardless of tragedies in life. What choice do I have, other than to be appreciative? I could be non appreciative, but at the same time, I'm contradictory, because I wish that things would have been different, but I know the reality of it. But because of
Yeah.
all these circumstances, to answer your question, which I guess you get the thing, the gist. I didn't have a focus on the things that you're talking about
Mhm.
in the four, due to the circumstances that I experienced early in life. And the second part of it is that, growing up, due to the circumstances of my parents, where
Mhm.
they came from, losing, frankly, liberty, the right to property, the right to free speech, the right to everything that America enshrines.
Mhm.
You know, they allowed a certain amount of wiggle room for me as a kid, unless I did
Okay.
something outrageous. So I wasn't if I went out, oh, be careful, come back by 10. But it wasn't, if I didn't come back by 10, it wasn't like you're grounded or this or that. I mean, it would have been only
Oh, I was.
extraneous. What was that?
Oh, I was.
No, not in my case, and not in my case at all. Or for any of those. Now, don't cross Flagler Street. Okay. Hey, come on, let's go, guys. We're crossing Flagler Street. Like
Yeah,
there
of
was
course. That's the first
no
thing you wanted to do. Yes.
right. So there was no. It's not. They weren't strict,
Hmm.
but I wasn't necessarily. Well, they weren't strict. I wasn't necessarily
A bad kid.
a bad kid necessarily. I did do some bad stuff, but
Well,
you know,
I think everybody did. I think everybody did. But yeah,
yeah,
I can see that. I was never pushed by my parents to be independent, but there was that general feeling that you wanted to be independent. Um, the one thing, and I don't know where this came from. I really don't. But my entire life, I always had this one thing. I wanted my dad to be proud of me. And he told me he was proud of me several times over the course of the years, several things I would do or things I had achieved or what have you. So it wasn't like I had this, unreasonable need for approval of my father or something like that. I wanted to amount to something that he would be proud of, you know?
yeah,
And so that kind of manifested itself in wanting to be independent to show him that I could do things on my own and that he had done a good job in raising me, quote unquote, the right way, you know. And I'd stumble here and I'd stumble there and bad things would happen and what have you. And trying to figure out how I'm going to get myself out of this, or I got, hard times. I'm going to struggle through hard times and I'm going to make it.
yeah.
Because I I don't I didn't really have this. It wasn't a chip on my shoulder or anything like that, but I wanted him to see that he'd done it right and that he could be proud of me.
Well, you
You
want
know?
your father and your parents to be proud of you, and
Yes.
I also wanted. Now, my dad on that line, um, you know, the idea of rock and roll and playing music and the arts,
Uh-huh.
you know, he wasn't necessarily incredibly like the comic book phase, which
Hmm.
lasted for a very long time, which crossed with the music phase, and I was more of an art. I liked art,
Hmm.
and I hated and hate authoritarian or the things of discipline,
Yeah.
um, and compulsion. I do not
Hmm.
like compulsion
Hmm.
at all, and I think a lot of us can agree with that. But one time he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, you know what? When you're older, you should run for councilman here in Sweetwater." And I was like, ugh. I was like, no way, God. Like totally sunk his battleship on that one. I was like, last thing, because to me, growing up, that's a square.
Uh-huh.
That's a position for a square, and I want rock and roll. I mean, I'm listening to Jimi Hendrix flailing on the guitar with my and Metallica and all these things
Yeah.
coalescing in the late 1980s, and I'm listening to all these things and my friends and hey man, check out this for us. Check out this Led Zeppelin song for the first time. Like
Ain't no Mohawks on the city council.
right, and my dad's thinking in terms of like a very traditional 19 um but for me that was, and in fact it was such I was so into that for years that I mean my mom even so a friend of the family married into our family. He was a lawyer,
Uh-huh.
and he it's married into both lines of my family. My father's family are very close.
Uh-huh.
came over and he says, you know, when they were drinking coffee and stuff, and he was sitting there drinking his coffee, and my mom's in the kitchen and stuff, and he says, you know, he says, come here, Eloy. He says, yeah, come over. He says, you know, you would make a good lawyer. Like they were trying to like give me notions to steer me from away from my rock and roll. I mean, the effort wasn't extraneous, but there were little hints that I was aware of. But reflecting back, I'm looking at it, and I was like, ugh. I was like, no way, lawyer. Like, no, I was rock and roll. That's how powerful the influence of that music and that culture and that rock and roll and that rebellion and all that was on me, because I identified with it. I identified with all of them. I identified with the Beatles. I identified with Elvis Presley. I identified with Eric Clapton. I identified with Boston. I identified with Metallica. I identified with all of them. It was just what it was. But, you know, then there's this whole world of straight lace, you know, suits and stuff. And that's what they're thinking. Because we're not going to, they're thinking, this guy's not going to make any money with this rock and roll.
Yeah, I was wondering if that, and I was going to ask you about that, if that ever came up to where, okay, you're doing the music thing, but when are you going to get a real job and settle down, Eloy? Did that ever come up?
Well, remember, so we're talking into my getting into my 20s, not arriving at my 20s. We're talking about, so I got a job at 15 years of age on my own within all this that we're talking about.
Right.
So I just up and went to, I just up and went. I think out of all my friends, I was the first one to get a job. I was like 15 years old. They gave me a job at McDonald's. It was a part-time job.
Yeah.
And I worked, and then I moved over to RVs and stuff because I wanted my own money to do my thing and stuff. So I already had that discipline, in which they were, I guess, happy about and stuff. I decided on my own. And I always got my jobs on my own. So it's not like, but they weren't jobs like lawyer or this or that. But then again, I was in my 20s. It was expected of you to go to school and without them observing me and me doing my thing. But to me, I go to school and all I could see is I want to contradict everybody here to see what, because my idea is to test. It's always been to test. Well, okay, if you're saying that, but you can't, some in life, it's, how can I say, I'm just how I am. I just don't like unquestioning acceptance of information when I have questions. And no, this is how it is, Eloy, and this and that. And I was totally against it. So I was basically a rebel without a cause. But I wasn't mean or bad, or it's just simply I was like, no, screw you. I'm gonna go ahead and do whatever the hell I want. And that's a trend, dude.
Well, Jamie of JP Woodwork said a lawyer would have been perfect. You can represent your neighbors in South Central Sweetwater.
We already talked about that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you got a bug invasion going on there?
I heard a sound, but
all I hear is Vigo.
Well, that too, but I heard some sound, but I can't quite, whatever. In any event,
half of my family was in construction in one form or another, and 1/4 of them were in the timber industry, and the remaining quarter were in various different little trades. But because I like to build stuff, you know, run saws and cut up wood and hammer stuff together and what have you, it was automatically assumed that I was going to go into construction. And when we got back up here, I went along with it. I worked many summertime jobs. I had 2 uncles that were general contractors, and I worked with them in summertime jobs and what have you. And that really got intense when I turned 16, because I wanted to earn my own money basically to pay for my car. my independence because I wanted to go out with friends and I wanted to go out with girls on the weekends. Well, you can't do that if you don't have money. So that was, to me, it was a necessary evil. I didn't want to do it. I just did it. And then got out of high school and it was just naturally assumed, okay, well, your Uncle Clay needs somebody to do this. So I worked with him for a while. That job would end and he wouldn't have anything for me. I went to work for the other uncle, worked with him, and I bounced back and forth and did that. And it did everything from the lowest construction laborer job on cleaning up after a fire or something, and tearing out half burnt materials off of walls and tearing down all this other kind of stuff, all the way up to finally I got into finish carpentry, and I wasn't the guy ripping out the old stuff. I was the guy putting up the new stuff, or one of the guys putting up the new stuff. And I did like it. But then when the economy dropped and I had to get out of this valley just to survive, I mean, unemployment here in this valley was 32% the month I left. I went in the army and I never looked back.
Was Joe Biden in office then too?
No, no.
Okay, just checking.
It was bad. And
just checking, Mark, because
well, no, what it was is it was the perfect storm. It was softwood lumber war #1 with Canada. And we had regulated ourselves and put so many regulations. The price of lumber went up so high, all of a sudden Canada dropped their prices to where we couldn't compete. And I mean, at that time, we had 12 mills in this valley running 24/7. Then all of a sudden, all the lumber's being shipped down from Canada and we couldn't compete. There was one mill running one shift and the rest of them closed down. And you had people who were used to making $20 an hour in the timber mills lining up to be a welder for $5 an hour. Now, this is back in 81, so this was quite a while back. And $5 an hour to somebody who was making minimum wage at $2 an hour, $5 an hour was good money. But to a sawyer or a grader that was used to making $20 an hour, it was chicken feed. And no self-respecting welder would even put his tools in the car for $5 an hour. But there were so many people out of work, wages dropped. And that's when I had to get out of here. So I went in the army and I was, call me Casper, I'm a ghost. But that was all part of that having to grow up real fast, because by that time I had a wife and 2 kids to support. So it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
I had mouths to feed and people to take care of. And I took, I don't know, some would call it the easy way out. I saw it as basically the golden ticket out, So I wasn't out there, cleaning up fire jobs anymore. I was running radar equipment. So, I mean, It worked for me, but yeah. And that made me grow up real fast too, was seeing that the folks around me, it wasn't just me going through hard times. The folks around me were, some people had it even worse. And it's like, holy cow. And that'll make you grow up fast too.
Well, talking about that, I'll throw this in. So in the early 1800s, this is just an example of growing up fast and how it differs from now and back then, and to do with my ancestors. So there were about 8 siblings from the marriage of Agustin Escajedo and Josefa Mier, which you would say in English Meyer, but it's really Mier. And they produced all those children, and one of them was my great grandfather.
Okay.
Which his name was Diego Escajedo Mier. Well, most of them, not all of them, went to the civil locale office in starting in 1834, 32, 34. I have all the documents that I've hunted down, and they um, registered to get a pass to go to Cuba.
Hmm.
Many of them did.
Hmm.
Many of them, I, the numbers exactly, some stayed, some did not. And they went. One of them was Moses Escajero Mir, and he went at 15 years of age. He got his pass to go to Cuba. And what these Spaniards would do is that they would go to Cuba, set up shop. In the case of them, they set up shop in Havana. I even have the number
Hmm.
of the cross section where their stores were. They would open up. They would open up stores. In the case of Moses, he opened up a clothing store.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I even have the name and all that, and they would make money there. No, the details are blurry, but uh, beyond that, but many of them work there, and I would assume this is where I assume that they would feed money back
Yeah.
To and remember, Cuba was in under the control of Spain at that
Yeah, they
time,
were a Spanish colony then. Yeah.
and so I'm assuming that the money would go back, but there was a lot of moving back and forth and whatnot. So that was a lot of what was going on there. So people back then in my ancestry, in order to make a living, had to move across an ocean, and they would boat back and forth depending on what the circumstances were, which is blurry to me. I don't know those details, but there are ship manifestos, so they would come and go. Um, so contrast that with us. We have local businesses and stuff. We have a more localized thing,
Yeah.
but in the 1800s, it was the era of moving
Yeah.
from one whole part of the world to another in order to get your business going, to feed your family, or whatever the case might be.
Yep.
um, and so you did move across the world in the 1980s and 90s through the military, to do just that.
Well, I thought I was moving across the world. I spent my entire life on the west coast of the United States. And
Okay.
I thought, oh boy, join the army, see the world. Here we go. I'm going to experience new things. I went to basic training in Oklahoma, did my school in Oklahoma, and they sent me right back to California. I was stationed in California for 3 years. So I was off the West Coast for a grand total of 4 months. And then they sent me right back to the West Coast. So I didn't see much of the world. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, about 75 miles north of where I was stationed. So I was back to where I had grown up. So I didn't see the world. So not until I got out and then went back in later on, but that's another story.
Well,
Uh,
the point is that
yeah,
people always throughout history are looking for ways to, obviously you have to
yeah,
break out of the cocoon, and spread your wings and fly and do what you
hmm,
have to do. And for some people it's different than for other people. Some people move from point A to point B across the globe,
uh-huh.
in the most weird scenarios that one would not
Oh yeah,
ponder unless one was involved in it, because you just don't have that window.
yeah,
In my window, without the knowledge of the past that
hmm,
I've acquired, I wouldn't think much of these things other than, well, my but people move across the world to get their families rolling and all that.
when we were stationed in Germany, there was a guy in my unit who it was a very similar situation to yours in that he joined the military just to get out of town like I did, but he lost both of his parents at a very young age. And he got over to Germany and decided he liked it over there. Met a girl, they got married, he had a little boy, and when he got out of the army, he was a US citizen. But the last probably year and a half he lived there, he worked on uh, getting the right visas to stay in Germany. And I said, you're sure when you get out, you're going to stay here in Germany? He's like, yeah, I got nothing to go back to. I got nothing, nobody to go back to. And he had a family here. He had learned the language, he had studied the language, gone to school for it and what have you. Then he just said, no, no, thanks. I'm going to stay. And as far as I know, he's still there,
Yeah.
you know? And so his situation was basically he had nothing to lose and nothing to go home to. And he had figured out that home was where he was. So, you know, and as far as I know, he's still there. So
It's
people do, move around for various reasons. So,
yeah, and I mean, and to better their scenario, or because they have no choice
yeah.
in some cases.
Yeah. Well,
So
you know,
yeah,
he told me that they talked about it for a little while. But because it would have been very easy for her to get a passport and get a dependent ID card, which she had while he was in the army, because
yeah.
they were married. And then both of them go back to the United States and her work on getting her citizenship. But he's like, I've got nothing to offer you back there. I've got nothing. I don't have a home. I don't have any family left. There is nothing for me. So there would be even less for you. So he just decided, no, we'll stay here, where at least she had her family. And her and her family went overboard to, I say overboard in my opinion, but they went out of their way to make sure he knew that he was a part of their family. So it all worked out for him. I mean, the last time I saw him was about a month before we left, and he seemed to be just digging it, living his best life. So more power to him.
Um, and something to do with Germany. Still in the same ballpark. And you probably know the story. I don't know. Maybe not. People out there know. But when the Beatles went over for the first time to Germany, they
Mm-hmm.
were very, very, very young. It wasn't the setup that they have now.
Mm-hmm.
There was no Ringo Starr in that first
Yeah,
iteration of their
Pete
band.
Best.
There was Pete Best,
Mm-hmm.
and the um, bass player was a Stu Sutcliffe,
Mm-hmm.
and Paul McCartney was playing guitar along with John Lennon. So it was John Lennon, Paul McCartney, both on guitar,
Mm-hmm.
Stu Sutcliffe on bass, Pete Best on drums, and George Harrison. There were probably like three guitars. You could look up the thing, but there's photos of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because now thinking about it, three guitars, but I guess that's what it was. Oh no, McCartney, Lennon, Stu, Harrison, a young Harrison. He may or may not have gone on that first trip. But anyways, long story short, Stu was a very close friend of John Lennon. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
that's how he got into the band. He wasn't necessarily, according to the books, a very good bass player, but because he was friends with John Lennon and he looked cool, because that's all it took in rock and
Yeah.
roll. Look, in rock and roll,
Well, that was also back in the day when they were doing the leather jackets and combing the hair, but long, grease
yeah,
back hair and the whole thing. Even yes, the Beatles were doing that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and but what I want to say, rock and roll, it's not so. It's good that you can play guitar, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not so. If you look cool, that goes a long way too. And you can fill in the blanks after the fact. But if you look cool, you're rock and roll. Yeah, come on, join our band. So there was a lot of that. And because it's the spirit of rock and roll. You don't need to
Mm-hmm.
be technically this. Or, it helps,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's a hindrance, depending on how you
Yeah.
know so anyway, so they went to Germany, and Stu fell in love with uh, a German girl
Mm-hmm.
named Astrid, I think it was, and she was a blonde girl with short blonde hair, a very lovely um, German girl that was an artist. She was part of this movement of artists back then, and she would take photographs and whatnot of the band and all that. A lot of the early pictures are from her, and she had a boyfriend,
Mm-hmm.
a German guy that was totally into the Beatles. They were all into the Beatles because they were so cool,
Hmm.
and so they and they became friends. But Stu struck up a romance with her, and he decided to stay. He said, "You know what? I'm not going back." And John was like, "Totally, dude. We're buddies, dude. You know, like,
Yeah.
drop her, come with me and stuff. You know."
Yeah.
And so that changed the dynamic. Paul became the bass player and whatnot,
Mhm.
and so he stayed with her. He passed away within a short time due
Mhm.
to some brain thing. He was a great painter, by the way, as well.
Mhm.
So it's interesting how
Yeah.
that worked. Yeah.
Well,
Did you
he
ever
may,
hear that story or?
I had heard I heard most of the story, but I hadn't heard all of it.
Okay.
But
Well, that's not all of
yeah,
it, but you know.
yeah. Oh, certainly. Some very, you got to wonder about. Of course, it's easy for with 2020 hindsight, dude. You left one of the most influential bands in history. Yeah, well, they weren't that then, so they hadn't worked themselves up to that point yet.
That's a good point.
So,
See, that's a good point because at the same time,
mhm.
um, I mean, you go with you have to go where you're destined to go by hook or crook. You're gonna go in the direction that you're destined to, I
That
think.
but you're going to go in the direction that you want to go because it's still one. I don't believe that we have a predetermined destiny because I think our free will is too much. You can make decisions. I mean, we were just talking briefly about the chain of events that had to occur for you to be born. If somebody had made one decision a little bit differently, you wouldn't exist. And the same with me. If somebody had made a decision differently, like
Mhm.
if my grandparents had decided to come west from Texas 2 months later, chances are they would have lived in a different house. And chances are my parents never would have met, you know,
Yeah,
things like that. I mean, it's the events that had to happen for you to
to occur.
exist
Yeah,
it's just unreal.
it's impossible to work it in your brain so
Yeah.
that it's and it's impossible to also decide
Hmm.
whether something is predetermined or, as you say, according to your particular. So look, um, you could lean one direction or the other, um, or you could be in one camp or the other if you so choose. I do not know
Yeah.
whether we're predetermined,
Well,
and within predetermined, we have certain leeway, or like I don't within the possibilities of this that you're talking about. It feels like I have control of my decision. Like, watch, check this out. Huh? I did that
yeah,
on purpose, or
you
did I?
you have control over certain things, but there is more that's not in your control than there is that's in your control.
Yeah, I'm talking
And
about
that's
predetermined.
but yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, I
I
don't know.
really am. No,
Like,
I don't either. I'm not, but I think, see, it's just my opinion. I'm not really sure of a predetermined destiny because
yeah,
so much of it is left up to chance. And I'll give you an example. When I went back into the Army, there were two aviation slots opened up. I could work on the scout aircraft that I worked on, or I could have worked on the big Chinook helicopters, the big dual rotor over the fuselage, big son of a guns. One would have sent me to Virginia for school. And then from there, I don't know where I would have gone. The one that I took, the observation scout helicopters, I knew it was going to send me to Alabama for school. And from there to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And so I chose that because I knew where the destination was, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I didn't know where I was going to be stationed if I went the other route. So I chose, yeah, I want to go to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I like the South. It's pretty cool. And as I've said before, most of Fort Campbell is actually in Tennessee. But anyway, so, but if I hadn't have made that choice, odds are I would not have ended up in Fort Campbell, and I'd have never met my wife, Linda. So I don't know if I was predestined to do that. I can't say yes or no, but I do know the choice was 100% mine because I did think seriously. I'd never been to Virginia. I'd
Well,
been through Tennessee,
you,
but I did seriously consider going with the other aircraft,
but
airframe.
for the purposes of the bigger picture that we're talking about that we don't know about,
Mm-hmm.
that we can't, you say that you know that you the choice was 100% yours.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at the like in reality, all we know is that I am Eloy and I'm going to lift my right arm.
Yeah,
So I just lifted it. That was mine completely 100%. So
right.
we know that within our world, but like in this grander picture of like a hypothesis of this and that, we don't know what we don't
No,
know if there is some sort of I mean, this
no,
has
we
been
don't. We don't. But what I'm getting at is I was faced with the decision and I had to make that decision. I had a choice
yeah.
to make. I could go in either direction. And Lord knows what would have happened if I'd have went the other way. I have no way of knowing because I didn't go that way. But I do know I wouldn't be in the situation I'm in right now if I hadn't have gone with this one, with the aircraft that I worked on, because I would not have met my wife and I would not have ended up here in this circumstance, which I'm very happy with and very satisfied with. So it was what of the two options I had to choose from, I went with the one that was the most appealing to me at that moment. And even in school, while I was learning to work on this aircraft, I still thought, what would it be going on if I was in Fort Eustis, Virginia, working on Chinooks? I still kind of bounced back and forth of, did I make a mistake? Did I go the right route? And it wasn't until I got to Fort Campbell, even before I met Linda, it wasn't until I got to Fort Campbell that I said, okay, yeah, this was the right move to make.
Last night to talk directly. This isn't probably. It's gonna make sense, but if one decides not to allow it to make sense, it won't make sense because it's that easy for it not to make sense
Okay.
in association to what you're saying. But it is connected
Mm-hmm.
to what you're saying. But again, one could lose the plot very easily if one decides to because it's so random. And it starts with empanadas.
Okay.
Last night, I said, I'm going to get myself some empanadas. And I went to the Latin cafeteria with a little window. And I walk up. I'm going to deviate for half a second, but I'm going to get back to your thing. And this is directly with your thing.
Okay.
Um, and I went to the window. Watch how I get there. And I went to the window. And there's these two guys standing at the window and another guy approaching. Like at night, it's like a hive. People go there
Mm-hmm.
because they're either wanting coffee or cigars or
Well,
whatever the hell.
it's like moths being you're attracted to the light.
To the to
Yeah.
the light. And even cops, you see, even cops and just everybody. It's just like,
Well, they got to eat too.
And so I said, you know what? I'm gonna get myself, And so I went, and I ordered. I said, oh, I'd like some empanadas, this and that. And then she brought out the food for the two guys standing on the side, and she brought two bags and stuff. And the guy says, oh, by the way, we want some sodas. The guy says, and he says, okay, what do you want? And he says, do you have a Coke Zero? And she looked at and she said, in Spanish, this is all in Spanish. She said, son, everybody here's fat. There is no zero. Okay. She said, like, they're not playing that zero game over there. And then he says, how about, and he tried her even further. He said, well, how about a Pepsi Zero? And she says, did you not hear what I said? We don't have nothing is zero here, nothing. And so they ended up with a normal Coca-Cola, but everybody else that was listening to that was laughing.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're at a window at like 1 a.m. and you're looking for diet supplements with your two huge bags of food.
I'm not an Ito, I'm an Ande.
Yeah. So she brings the empanadas to me. I pay her and stuff. I made a little joke about it, and she laughed and stuff. uh, and so I got in the car and I drove off. I've been at that window throughout my life countless times since I was little,
Uh-huh.
with either with my dad, my mom, friends. I mean, since the 19 early 90s, all my life.
Hmm.
Um, that's how long that's been there. And I've ridden these roads and drove down these roads in every which direction
Hmm.
all my life. In every corner, I've visited every. I can't say every, but any block that you pick out throughout Sweetwater, I've had friends. That's how long I've been. I've had friends that have lived there, that
Yeah.
have been in those houses, sitting, eating Cheetos with friends, playing video games, running around. Point me in any direction. That's how long I've been here,
Hmm.
and all those people are gone,
Yeah.
and I'm still here. There might be some. So I'm driving back, and I remember driving down that road. It came into my mind last night, and I'm saying my dad, when I would be in the passenger seat, would always turn at the other block, not this block, but I always turn at this block. I find it more comfortable. You could choose either way, and it's the same difference.
Hmm.
But for some reason, I like to approach my house
Hmm.
by going through this previous block, making a little L zigzag Z,
Hmm.
and because there's a certain pathway I like within the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Why? And I can choose the other way. Why do I? And my father would choose the other way. My father would go right up to the block, that's our
Hmm.
block,
Uh-huh.
and turn in and park. I do a block further back, turn and go around another block and into the block. I know this sounds trivial, but the point, to go back to what you were saying, is that as I was going back from that night from the empanada, um, why do I choose to do that? Nothing, nothing. I've not thought it through. Why do I choose that instead of the other thing? Why is my choice A instead of B persistently?
Because you prefer it. I mean, some things don't mean anything, and you don't have to have a reason. You like your favorite color because you like it.
If
There
there's no
doesn't have to
reason,
be a reason.
if there's no reason,
You just like it.
no, but if there's, well, no, I don't. Well, look, I have to say no, Mark. I mean, I have to say no. Um, it's easier to say it's just because I did it and that's it. That's the truth of the matter is, anything we do, we're not going to try to explain
Well,
it out. So I
well,
understand that.
let me submit this. If you
Yeah,
didn't like it, you wouldn't do it. If you didn't prefer it, you wouldn't do it. You'd do it just like your dad did. You'd go up to the corner and make that one turn, and that'd be it.
the question, the right. Obviously, I prefer it. I choose it, but
Hmm.
obviously obviously I choose it. I think I choose. We're just talking about
Hmm.
choices and this and that. So, but the question is, why do I choose it? And so consistently, as opposed to not. Why do you choose the things that you do, or the color? Right. Well, but they're, so if our choice,
Well,
if our choices are it's because I like it.
well,
Well, what does?
has
Go
it
ahead.
become a habit?
That's a good point.
Has it just become a habit? When I
That's a
go
good.
home, I make a turn here and I make a turn there and I'm home.
That's a good point.
You could go a different direction. You could go 3 blocks over and then come back around and really, chase your tail.
That's a
But
good
has it
point.
has it become just a habit, you know?
That's a good point. And we are creatures of habit.
Well, as a musician, muscle memory. Is
Yeah.
that what it is? I get to this intersection, I turn. Don't even think about it. You just do it.
Well, you have heard of those people
Mhm.
that, I mean, you've probably heard of those people that, and something to this effect. And I blacked out. I was sitting in my car and I blacked out, and the next thing I know, I'm sitting at home, or some.
That has happened to me where I not so much that okay,
Damn.
I drive home from work, get in the driveway, and I don't remember the trip home.
Right.
Stopped at all the stoplights, went through all the green lights, stopped at all the stop signs, but nothing remarkable happened. It's the same mind-numbing trip over and over again that I've made every day for the past however many years. I don't remember the trip home. That used to scare the crap out of me. It really did. Because it's like, if I don't remember the trip, what didn't I see? Did I run over somebody? Or, obviously I didn't, because that would stand out, but
Yeah.
nothing stands out. And it's like, uh-oh, I
Well,
don't remember the trip home.
so in
But
conclusion, oh, go ahead.
but some things you really can't explain away. For instance, okay, you're getting ready to go out to the store. You got to put your shoes and socks on. Do you put both socks on, then both shoes, or do you put on one sock and one shoe, then the other sock and the other shoe?
That's very interesting you say that, Mark. That's very interesting that you say that.
Both are valid, but you have a 50-50 shot. I mean, you can
Now I
do it.
know. Now I
You
know that you're that. Now I know that you're actually a real human being, at least as far as I can tell, and not a computer image that has been planted in my mind, and that I'm a brain in a vat,
Yeah.
and nothing is real. It's just I'm suspended in some sort of like empty room,
Hmm.
picturing a movie of life. Because I have, and how many of us have thought that? I have thought that too. When you're putting on your shoe, go
Hmm.
ahead and say that again. You choose what?
When you put on your shoes and socks, do you put on both socks, then both shoes, or do you put on one sock and one shoe, then the other sock and the other shoe? Both of them work. Both of them the same end result. You have both socks and both shoes on. It's just, which order do you do that in?
So true. No,
And
but you
and
think of it,
but
right?
it doesn't mean anything. It just
No,
means you're getting dressed.
no, you're saying it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it doesn't, because you still got your shoes and socks on. I don't think it means anything. Unless, okay, now it could mean something if, for instance, let's say you got a dodgy knee and one knee is a little bit sore. And okay, I've got my foot up here. I'm putting my sock on. I'm going to put my shoe on too. That way I only got to lift this son of a gun up here one time.
Yeah.
That makes sense, you know. But if you're an otherwise healthy, normal human being with no other things going on physically, mentally, or environmentally, does it really matter? Either way, you end up with your shoes and socks on, because I have a third
Matter,
option.
but wait. Does it really matter? And does
No,
it mean something? No, no, no. No. Why? I know where what your understanding of it
yeah.
is, and I look. I agree. Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem. You're basically saying there's. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Hmm.
You're basically saying, I'm going to complicate it, but to explain
Okay.
what you're saying, to see if this is, you're basically saying we live in this world with all these objects, ourselves, and
Hmm.
everything. We have these huge things that take focus and ability to concentrate and endeavor towards and function and repair, whatever the case. And then we also have well, follow. You just sprang up Harneel Media. Are you following me though? Are
I'm
you following?
following you. I am
Okay,
following you.
so we have these big things that
Uh-huh.
take a lot of mental effort and physical effort, and those are some things that
Yes.
require.
Yeah,
But then there's
there's a
these.
consequence. Yeah. Yeah.
But then there's these low level or simple or automatic um, things like putting on socks or grabbing a pencil, things that are, you could say, complement the bigger picture, but they're very small things that don't require the brain energy
Yeah,
equivalent of like the big things.
exactly.
So you're kind of saying, well, these are.
Exactly. There are some little things that are inconsequential, little decisions that you make consciously
Yeah.
or subconsciously that you don't even know you make. But do they really have any kind of a meaning? And are they a part of a predetermined destiny? I don't think they are. It's kind of like the old toilet paper. Does it go over the roll or under the roll? It doesn't matter. The roll's empty. You didn't change it. So there's no roll there. Uh, Peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Do you put peanut butter on both sides and jelly in the middle, or do you just put peanut butter on one side and jelly in the middle? And which do you do first?
Mhm.
You know, there are just various little things like that, little decisions that we make over the course of a day that don't mean anything,
Okay.
but we develop a habit of doing something one way or another. For instance, if I'm going to make a sandwich, I'll put mayonnaise on both sides of the bread and then a little bit of mustard on the lunch meat. I know people who put mayonnaise on one slice of bread and mustard on the other slice of bread. It it's your sandwich.
Okay.
Make it
Okay.
your way.
Okay. So, um, would you say that I fairly represented what your point is in my way?
Yes,
But
you have. Yes.
so that lets you know that you're clear on that I
Yes.
understand what's coming to me
Oh
from you.
yes. Oh
Okay,
yes.
so
I know you completely understand, and I know I understand what you're saying. So
okay, that's what I want to. So
mhm.
can you, and for my sake, can you state what I am saying as a contrary to that? Although I don't disagree with what you're saying, right? Like I don't disagree with the fact that I'm grabbing a pencil, this and that, but but I'm also opposing it for the sake of the thought process
The thought process.
of what if everything. So can you tell me in not so many words or however you want what I am trying to get across, just so I can self-observe myself to see if
That
what it is I'm saying.
that maybe it doesn't take a higher part of your brain, that maybe it is something that's a force of habit, or then again, maybe it does take a higher part of your brain, you just don't realize you're doing it. Am I
Yeah, that
wrong there?
no, you're encapsulating, and I would add just this that all these little things require it's these are smaller parts of a larger puzzle that allow us to, so like what you were saying in the beginning, in order for you to get rolling with your project of your driveway, um, one step precedes the next step, and
Yes.
so we're basically little building blocks of things or thoughts
Hmm.
that amount to big things that get us to our end goal. So
Exactly.
so in my argument for all this is that all those small things matter
Hmm.
to whatever degree they matter. But the moving of a pencil is preceded by grabbing the little note sticky pad, and writing the actual
Right.
information that you left on the refrigerator for your wife that she then reads, and by 9 o'clock. And so let me just say, so all these things are small components of a bigger thing, like building the CNC. There's smaller
Hmm.
parts and stuff. There might be a bolt, if put on wrong or this or that, may lead
Right.
to a catastrophe later. So I'm looking at it at that,
Right.
and I'm adding the point that these small things are usually automatic, and we don't focus or think about them. But not necessarily in my argument in this situation. It's not that they don't have any meaning. It's just that they're, to agree with what you said, they're small parts that don't require concentration in order for you to get to your big goal. They're just
Right.
things there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm with you for the most part, but some things are inconsequential is what I'm getting at. The main goal is to have your shoes and socks on, and that's what I was showing there. Steve was saying uh it means something if you put the shoes on then the socks. Yeah, then you have an issue. You know, you put your socks on over your shoes. Okay, we have to have a chat there, son. um you know, so um yeah. And he threw in another wrinkle there. The better question is, do you bend over to put your shoes on, or you bring your foot up on your knee to do it? You know, I actually take a third route, Steve. I have a shoehorn with a long handle, and I stand up and step into my shoe,
Let,
use
let,
the
let,
shoehorn, then
let,
step into the other shoe.
let me try to so
But
let me just say this one thing. So how can I put, okay, so if you remove the shoe from
mhm,
the equation, don't
mhm,
worry about the shoe.
Right.
Don't worry about the sock. Don't worry
Right.
about the pen or the note, the sticky note on the refrigerator. You
Mhm.
don't think of these smaller sort of movements of items
Right.
or your arms stretching to grab them or none of that.
Right.
Um, Remove the actual thing. It I'm focused more on as opposed to the shoe. Although I found the shoe sock thing interesting. It's the decision making of a human being, choices of a human being.
Right.
It's not necessarily so you have minuscule choices. So forgetting about these concrete things, such as you have minuscule choices, a little thought that blips into your head and
Hmm.
then recedes back into the ether or
Yeah.
the the continuum of your brain or somewhere in the back room somewhere. Um, there's little things that are sparking
Right.
around.
Right.
We have that, and then
Hmm.
we have more grand concrete
Right.
concepts like building something to arrive at
Right.
its conclusion and stuff. So
Or
I'm talking about all of it
mhm.
matters as a building block, and I'm talking about we don't we're not focused on the sock or the this or the that unless we're focused like you brought
Well,
it up
if
because
there's a causal effect, for instance, you were talking about taking the pencil and getting the post-it note, and then Linda reading the note. She
yes.
can't read that note until I've written it. So there is a cause and effect there.
Okay,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
do have to. Then it does matter.
Okay,
But
well,
if
yeah,
we're going to the grocery store, it doesn't matter to her one bit if I put on one sock then one shoe or both socks then both shoes. It doesn't matter to her. We're going to end up at Walmart. So that's why I'm saying in that scenario for that context, some things just don't mean anything and they just don't matter. You
no,
know.
I
So
related back to
but
you, you know
but
what you
you're
said.
absolutely right. In the greater grand scheme of things, there is a causal effect because she's going to be waiting for me for a long time in the car if I don't just get my shoes and socks on, no matter
Yeah,
which feet I put them on. So,
yeah.
they can mean things in the great grand scheme of things, but they're meaningless in and of themselves in the way that we do them. You know, excuse me. Um, it doesn't matter when you take a slice of bread out of the toaster and you put butter on it. When you get that butter on your knife, it does not matter which side of the bread you put that butter on. You've got a 50-50 decision to make. It doesn't matter. The end result is the same. You're going to have buttered toast. And it's 100% your choice. But there is a causal effect there, a cause and effect there, because your eggs are sitting there waiting and they're getting cold. So hurry up and make a decision. That's all I'm getting at. Some decisions don't have any greater meaning other than I want it that way or I like it, or it's habit, kind of like how you decide you're going to drive the city block to get home. It is a good question. It's a good philosophical question to say, why do I do this? But I think that's about all it can be, is an intellectual exercise, because at the end of the day, does it really concern you? Does it really matter to you? I mean, does it cause you any kind of anguish or, any kind of anxiety to think about it?
Well, it's
Because,
hold on, no, no. So look,
okay.
how so okay, so for your purposes,
Hmm.
thinking of these mundane things, and we have gone down this route to
Sure.
explore it a little bit. I can agree with you that there's things that are on automatic
Uh-huh.
that we don't have to think of much more beyond that.
And we don't even realize we do it.
And we don't even realize we do it. They're on automatic due
Hmm.
to what you said before, perhaps habit. We do one thing one time, we
Hmm.
repeat it the next time, and all of a sudden we have this trend. But so I agree with that. Obviously, I mean this is what we
Sure.
do. But the things we don't think about that are smaller things that don't have any meaning
Gosh.
actually do have meaning if you're willing to look at the meaning. if you're willing to look at that. But why would you if you're not interested in doing that? But remember, there's people that are dedicated to thinking in terms of that in the fields of psychology. And
Sure.
there's people that are dedicated to such things
Right.
to extract, so on the so we're looking at this macro world and stuff,
Sure.
and I'm saying that yes, all these things have consequences to whatever degree that they do. Okay, but on the macro side of it, you were mentioning if you didn't make the decision to do this one work for the army on helicopters, you would have ended up somewhere else. But yet you ended. So and I'll just throw this at you. So I wouldn't be here, like in terms of all this on the macro
Mhm.
side, if my parents, if better yet, if there was not a revolution in Cuba,
Mhm.
according to everything, I wouldn't be born because my parents met here.
Mhm.
They were from two different places in Cuba,
Yeah.
and they met here in
Yes.
the 1960s. So if not for these huge events in the past,
Yeah.
I wouldn't exist. So that's a far removed from that paperclip,
Yes.
on the thing. That's on another extreme of the spectrum of consequence. Uh,
Exactly.
but so here's the thing. I mean, we don't have the answers to this because we just
Yeah. This is just a mental exercise.
but on that grand scale, um, is it normal to think, or is it more natural for us to think, or for you to think that in my case, it was destined to happen, and
Mhm.
therefore I'm here, or was it just a random thing, and therefore I'm here because it was just a random thing that happened because of a lot of people making decisions in time that brought about a revolution, that brought about that snowballed into, oh, Eloy here in Sweetwater. Is it Was it just random occurrences, or was it a predetermined destiny, or was it something half and half? What was it? Are we here because we're predetermined, or because of random
Well,
happenstance?
let me ask you this. Do you believe that there is such thing as luck? Do you
That's
believe in the
a tough one.
concept of luck?
I
Yeah.
believe in the concept. So luck means, does
You
luck
know,
mean,
good
does luck?
luck or bad luck? I mean, I consider myself to be very lucky that
Uh-huh.
certain things have happened in my life
Mhm.
that have led me to where I am right now.
That's a tough one
Not
to
all
look.
of them, not all of them good. There are some bad things that happened along the way. But all in all, I consider myself to be very lucky because even after the good things and the bad things, I'm very comfortable and very satisfied and very happy with where I am right now, physically, emotionally, mentally, the whole thing. I consider myself to be very lucky because things could very easily be worse.
I'll just time
So
out with all that. What is the definition
I
of your, or what's your definition of luck, of lucky? Because in there is where I can say yes, I believe in luck, or not. Because here's the problem that we need to know: does luck mean like, what do we know? Does luck
well,
mean random, or does luck mean
I mean, there could be some
endowed with a special cream that gives
there
you?
there could be some randomness involved. For instance, there's a guy, I think he's passed away now, I think, lived in I want to say either Wyoming or Montana.
Okay.
The man was struck by lightning 7 times. Now, the old cliche, lightning never strikes twice in the same place, what found him 7 times? I would consider that to be unlucky. Now, his job, he was outside a lot, but so were billions of other people on Earth. But he was hit by lightning 7 different times. So
Dude.
now I think Jamie is partially right here. I do tend to believe that. I think you make your own luck. good luck comes with the decision you make. I think there is something to that, but I don't think that explains it all. I mean, there are times where you have walked around a corner and maybe you don't know, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Maybe a car drove up on the sidewalk where you were just standing. I mean, have you ever crossed a street and then heard an accident behind you? Or have you ever seen an accident happen right in front of you?
Yeah, or to the side of you.
Yeah. Or it's just like, dude, if I'd have left the house 13 seconds earlier, if I hadn't have stopped to tell Vigo sit, I could have been in the middle of that son of a gun.
Let me pause
You
you
know?
there. That's also a good point. And by the way, we haven't solved any of the because the question of luck, and we're just getting your idea
Yeah,
of it
just getting my opinion. Yeah.
and their idea of it out there.
Mhm.
But dang it, I
Sorry.
freaking no, it's okay. It was me because I wanted to address that you know what you're saying, but I was gonna say something that was good for this whole conversation. Okay, but whatever. I'll skip whatever because I can't remember, but I'll just say this. And this works with you too, because you have a story of it, which you've told before, but I think it'll apply. So when the lottery, scratch off lottery first happened here in Dade County,
Uh-huh.
my mom went to the store. This was like in the 80s and stuff. My mom went to the store and bought 2 tickets, one for my grandma and one for herself.
Uh-huh.
And she brought the 2 tickets. I was standing at the door. I was a little kid and stuff, and we were all there. My grandmother was, and she brought 2 tickets, and she said to my grandma, "Okay." uh, my grandmother was very. She was very. She had fire, the Italian fire, because she was
Mhm.
part of that. She had Italian fire, and so she would not like, whereas people hold back, she'd tell you what's what, but she was very good. She'd help people. She would help people, you know, children and stuff. Like she'd give away. But anyway, so she comes up, but my grandmother had fire, so she went like that. My mom went like that, and my grandmother had her pick, and she picked one of the tickets, and my mom proceeded to scratch off, and my mom won $5,000, and my
Yeah.
grandmother didn't win anything. She and when my mom won, she was like, whatever.
This is stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, this is stupid. And my mom went, and my mom was happy. Look, I won 5. She was so happy and stuff. Well, so to this thing of luck,
Mhm.
was this luck or was this predetermined? I will say, I don't know. I just don't freaking know. I can't say that. Um, Look, I can't say it was just happenstance and this and
Well,
that, and I can't say it was I don't know what that means. I
well,
can say, well, let me just finish with this. I can say that in my mind, in order for that to occur, for my mom to have scratched off that winning ticket,
mhm.
at least briefly, within the timeline, she had to have arrived at the right time, like you have been mentioning,
Yep.
to
The
that
right place at the
store,
right time.
and that next person in line and her coming up and asking for a ticket or 2 tickets, and that exchange happening, and all these, in the traffic light, and the this and all these things had to align in order for that ticket to arrive in, and the
Yeah.
printer that printed the roll of tickets,
Yeah.
and the
And was
guy
it the
that signed.
first ticket printed or the second ticket printed? You know?
Right, so all these things had to align
Hmm.
in order for her to, so you could easily say that those things are true, because they are true. All those
Uh-huh.
things had to
It
happen
happened.
for her. It happened for her to get it.
Hmm.
But did all those things, and this is going to go back to the same, did all those things happen on purpose, in combination with millions and millions of other things, so that everything that happens? I mean, it's difficult
Now,
to say about luck or not luck, because we don't know. But what's your thoughts?
well, I was going to say the dictionary definition of luck is, and this is from the Oxford Dictionary, okay? Success or failure apparently brought by chance rather than through one's own actions.
Okay, that's
Or
different.
or um, chance considered as a force that causes good or bad things to happen.
That's where the problem comes in.
Right.
So if you use the first step, okay, so wait. So if you use the first definition,
Hmm.
you can then calm your brain. I mean, I would
Hmm.
assume,
Yeah.
and say, okay, so if something it happened not of my will, but wait a second, there's even a problem with that because
Happened by chance.
right. So you could say that any
Well,
person gambling,
yeah.
it's luck because,
And that's why that word is thrown around so much in
but
casinos is
but
luck. Good luck,
the
bad luck, whatever.
but the other definition that comes along with it,
Uh-huh.
that predetermined or something to that
Uh,
effect.
chance considered as a force that causes good or bad things to happen. An example of that is that they give is good luck was with me.
Okay, so
So
and
that
that's what we've been
that's
dealing with.
a philosophical thing, an outside force, you know.
Yeah, and
But
that's the two things there. Go
and
ahead.
that's kind of where I get back to what Jamie was saying up here when he said, I think you make your own luck. Good luck comes with the decisions you make. I think there's a lot to that. Sometimes that is true. Think about it. Your mom decided to buy lottery tickets at that place at that time and not at the next store they went to.
So that falls under what category of the two definitions that
I
you have?
would say that is success or failure apparently brought by chance rather than through your own actions. Even though she made the conscious decision to buy the tickets at that store, it was chance that caused that $5,000 winner to be one of the two she purchased.
Let's
So maybe it's a combination of the two
but let's
definitions.
reel something in as well. Now this nobody's gonna like.
Mhm,
Nobody here's gonna like this because
mhm,
this is not gonna make sense. It's not gonna be intuitively sensible because it's not reasonable.
mhm.
Intuitively,
Uh-huh.
but it is reasonable. This is screwed up, but whatever. I'm gonna throw it out there. This is screwed up. Um, who's to say that that winning ticket
Mhm.
or those gamblers that won is a good thing in terms of luck? Because you usually think of luck as something good. It could be bad, like Steve was mentioning. Steve
Yes.
said good and bad. So that is true too.
Mhm.
But we can't. Okay, so I'm gonna. This is screwed up, but whatever. I'm gonna just screw it up. So you win a lottery at a casino. You
Mhm.
get the money, and due to that process, and you get the money because of that, you get jacked in the parking lot. As a simple example,
Mhm.
because you have the money now, you got jacked, um, and so you had it. so,
Yeah.
so um,
Well, luck is a double-sided coin, you know. Now, your mom considered it a good luck because she won $5,000.
right.
Would she still think that way if the guy who bought the ticket, right, the guy right behind her in line, bought the next ticket and won $50,000? Would she still consider that $5,000 win good luck?
I don't know.
You know, you
I
have
would
no way of
consider it.
knowing that.
I would consider it if we had to do that
Hmm.
on a scale of 1 to 10 luck.
Hmm.
I would think of it on a sliding scale of luck. So
Uh-huh.
I received
Sure.
X amount of, I received 50%
Well,
or 10%, 20% luck,
yeah.
whereas they received X amount of luck.
Well, I have a couple of stories here since we're on this gambling thing, kind of a thing. Specifically on the lottery, there's a guy in Australia, and there's a YouTube video. You can find this if you look for it on YouTube. Was
Okay.
a guy in Australia who stopped at a convenience store and did a scratch off ticket right there and won $50,000. And some news reporters were talking to him about it, and they said, go buy a ticket and reenact it for us so we can get some B-roll. So he went and bought a ticket and he sat it down and he scratched it off. And right there on their cameras, he hit it for another 100,000.
Holy smokes.
So,
Mark.
yeah, I know. So I don't think there's anybody here that would argue that's bad luck. Okay.
No,
But on
No,
the other side of that coin,
in itself.
there's a lady who correctly guessed the winning lottery numbers in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. She correctly guessed the numbers. The problem was she played the winning numbers from Massachusetts and Rhode Island and the winning numbers for Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So she got them exactly backwards.
You know what I call that? What would you call that? If you
I
had to
called,
use
you know, it, and it's weird. This is
but
the strange one. I don't know. Part of me says maybe that's karma. Maybe part of it's poetic justice. Maybe some of it is just bad luck.
no, because okay, so there's such terrible, thunderous irony, and like with that, the fact that you got to
Not you
the
didn't guess the
universe.
winning lottery numbers. You guessed two winning
I I
sets of
just got
lottery.
chills. I just got chills because just the idea of that. I mean, that is a huge universal
Yes, that is karma.
because
That's a signal.
dude, I mean,
I would be helping little old ladies across the street. I would be holding the door open for everybody. I'd be holding the door open for 19-year-old muscle bound dudes, man.
if that doesn't humble you, either that
Yes,
humbles a person or I don't know what because
exactly. I'd be adopting puppies and kittens by the hundreds, you know. I mean, just anything to rack up good karma points, you know what I mean?
so okay, so I guess I guess to sort of like bow tie it all, and so we're sort of starting to
Mm.
steer the plane and stuff
Yeah.
in the direction of home. um I don't take any, I don't have any problem with any of the definitions and explanations that you brought forth this evening.
Mm.
I think that they're valid explanations, or let's say this, they're reasonable explanations and reasonable ways of, like, in terms of what you said earlier, of the smaller things don't matter and whatnot.
Mhm.
I take issue and worry with the small things if I think of them. But when I don't think of them, I'm not operating on the level of thinking of, do I pick up the can of polyurethane
Yeah.
and move it left twice? Like, I'm not thinking in those terms, but for the experiment or the exercise of it.
Yeah.
So I think that everything you said was reasonable, um, and I think that everything we said before, and with this other thing that is related with the luck, um, reason. By the way, Mark, reasonable. What you said before in terms of um, just simply reasonable. I'm saying that it's totally. Um, I mean, you don't want to be focused on little things. You're not going to get anything done. So I think that it's completely with this luck thing. I want to be clear on that. With this luck thing, I don't know if I can say it's that second or first definition.
Mhm.
The problem is that I believe, and I don't know this, like I can't prove this. And if you can't prove something, you can't necessarily. But I believe that we, we're created
Mhm.
by a creator. I believe that. I can't prove it, so it's my personal belief. But believing that, I think we're guided in life, or at least we have a little something on our shoulders that say,
Let's call it
"Hey,
conscience. Yeah.
yeah." And I think that that's connected to the creator of the universe. So I think all these things, and that we're given things. Yes, we work for things,
I
and we, but we're cradled, even though it's a rough life. So when it comes to things of determination and randomness, I, I don't know. I could easily just say, "Man, that was lucky," or I
Yeah.
could easily say, "Man,
And
that you know what, that's a gift from God."
and I think we have come up with the concept of luck as a way of explaining things like that to ourselves.
Yeah,
You know, that and that's just my opinion. Because if you don't have another explanation for it, It was just luck. See, I'm a live and let live kind of guy,
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily care how you get there. To me, that's less important than if you did get there. See, I do believe that wishing wells work, but I don't think wishing wells work in the way people think they do. Most people think that you walk up to a wishing well, throw in a quarter, and ask the question, and maybe you'll get your wish. I think they work before that. I think they work before you even reach in your pocket, because I think 2/3 of the wishing well success is you knowing what to wish for.
Yeah.
Knowing yourself and knowing what you want. Because the only thing I would differ with you on, when you were in your explanation there a minute ago, is when you said we are given things. I think, yes, we are given some things, but I think we are given the opportunity for more than we recognize. I think we're given more opportunities for things
As
than we are
opposed to
given things.
directly.
Yes. And it's up to us to take that opportunity and run with it. And some of the inconsequential stuff doesn't really matter. If you want to put sour cream on your French fries and ketchup on your baked potato, I say, why not? It's the same vegetable. If you like it that way, go for it. It doesn't really matter.
Let me
But
okay, go ahead, go ahead.
but some things, I think opportunities come to us and we don't act on those opportunities. We might recognize it, we might not. But if we don't act on those opportunities, we tend to, I can only speak for myself, we tend to bemoan our bad luck. I think it's a cliche, and I know it is, but you miss every shot you don't take.
Yeah, no, I,
So,
I agree with all of that, but I have to
you
go
know,
back to that sour cream as a place marker or a placeholder,
uh,
or the ball pen,
mm-hmm,
marker or whatever. When you say sour cream on your potato, hot
mm-hmm,
potato with bacon on top,
yeah,
put that to the side and replace it with, so that has no purpose or damage to it.
yeah,
Move that,
it
move that.
doesn't mean anything.
Okay, move that hot potato to the side and place it with a single thought in your brain: that neighbor across the street, boy, I hope they slip on a banana peel, or some innumerable little things. It's a thought occurring in your brain, a very simple, that thought,
Uh-huh.
that thought, which is a negative thought,
Sure.
that you take pleasure in because it's something that you would be pleased in. This is another example, like the hot potato, but
Mm-hmm,
now it's a thought. Because
mm-hmm.
I used some random pen, and now you said sour cream, but it doesn't. Those are just placeholders for small things build
Mm-hmm.
bigger things. Take a thought. If you let a thought fester, there's people that spend there's people that fall down catacombs of their own device
Mm-hmm.
because of one small thought or one small thing. So when I said what I said, you I wasn't. And by the way, I agree with you. We don't look at the small things. Generally speaking, we're trying to get on with things that are practical and stuff. But my suggestion wasn't something so. I don't want to make it silly, like whether I butter my popcorn on all three sides plus inside with a little syringe. I'm
Yeah.
saying that there's small things that are that
Well,
amount to bigger things, and that those things, we don't think of them, but they have
but
import depending on how much import they have accordingly.
I agree with you 100% on that, but that's why I said the inconsequential. There is no consequence if you put ketchup on your baked potato. There is no consequence. None. If you like it that way, go for it. There is no
Yeah.
consequence. What you're talking about, that's why we have a conscience. That's why we have a conscience. And that's why we as a society have decided, no, that's the wrong thing to do. And we don't do that. You know, Uh,
Yeah. The
as
old
a
banana,
society, we have decided you don't do that.
the
But
old neighbor on a the old neighbor on a banana peel
yeah,
gag.
but then again, did your neighbor just kick your dog? Maybe he deserves to step on a banana peel. Context is key. Steve says if you're injecting butter into your popcorn, you really need to get a hobby. Sounds to me like he has a hobby, and that hobby is injecting butter into his popcorn.
Because what Steve doesn't see Steve is not thinking outside the box. Is what Steve doesn't know is that Dremel sells a minuscule little drill, and you can hollow out the inside of the little seed that popped, and you can fill it with a small little at Harbor Freight. They sell the mini next to the plumbing tools. They sell a little mini syringe. You can fill it with butter, hot butter, and if you do that to all your popcorn, you will have the delicacy of a lifetime watching your movie.
And I understand DeWalt is developing a heated, battery operated heated syringe that heats the butter up to the proper temperature, so
With the,
it's just melted enough to where it doesn't pop the popcorn while you're injecting it, because that could ruin your entire movie night.
yeah,
If your popcorn's popping while you're injecting the hot butter into it, Houston, we have a problem.
you know, I dare anybody to look through the annals of the internet to see anybody that's used those words, injecting popcorn
I'll Google it now.
with a syringe. Well, however, any loose association I'll accept, because if you get too specific, it becomes very, very difficult. But if anybody has ever injected or butter inside the pop, thing like that,
How to prepare popcorn. Oh, inculcating popcorn with a spore syringe.
holy smokes! No, Mark, you know what you know what the significance of this is?
Inoculating jars with popcorn, injecting popcorn jars. I would not
Dude,
jive you, Earthling.
you know what that means. There's nothing that one could come up with, relatively speaking. There's it has to be something, but chances are, if you had to bet the lottery, everybody's come up with all the crazy things. I mean, there's not much you can come up with.
Yeah. Uh, JP Woodwork says he's sponsored by Dremel.
He is.
uh,
He
he
is.
he also says there's a video on YouTube about injecting alcohol into popcorn.
Holy smokes!
Yeah, I'm convinced that if you go to Google and you just put in two words that you don't think mean anything together,
They will come up with something.
there's a result for it. Because I'm convinced that it is almost impossible to have an original thought, because you got to figure, with as many billion people as there are walking this planet.
7+ billion.
Yeah. And the percentage of that 7+ billion that have an online presence or have been online.
Wait, billion or trillion?
Billion, 7 billion.
We have 7 billion,
Yeah.
not
With,
trillion.
yeah, no. With the number of people on the planet who have access to internet, for somebody to type those two words together, the odds are pretty much there. So
Yeah, that's incredible, Mark.
yeah.
That really is incredible.
Yeah. So maybe it doesn't matter if you have sour cream on your French fries and ketchup on your baked potato.
Well, ketchup is only tomato, but then
Yeah.
again, why would you want that on your
But
freaking potato?
it's weird because, well, people eat ketchup on their French fries
That's true.
and they put sour cream on their baked potatoes. But they would look at you weird if you put ketchup on a baked potato and sour cream on a French fry. My last trip to Canada, when I was in the Army, and then we'll land the plane, I ordered a hamburger with French fries, and they asked me, did I want brown gravy on my fries? And when I said no, thank you, they thought I was weird. I didn't think they were weird for asking me if I wanted brown gravy, because to me, a potato is a potato. It doesn't matter if it's mashed, baked, or fried. Gravy with potatoes is not odd.
Yeah.
They thought it was odd that I didn't want it.
Yeah, but Americans eat gravy and potatoes.
Yeah, but
So it's
not
not,
normally. But not normally with French fries.
oh, it was French fry. Yeah. Isn't that like a poutine type deal?
Yeah, it's brown gravy and cheese curds.
Yeah.
And I'm on
No,
a mission to get poutine put on the menus of restaurants in the United States because it is fantastic stuff.
but we do have loaded fry. Like we have chili fries and all
We
sorts of
get
stuff.
we get close, but this is very specific. It's cheese curds, also known as squeaky cheese. It's cheese curds and then hot brown gravy poured over the whole thing so the cheese starts to melt. It's oh my god, it's
I
you
mean,
know.
I wouldn't look. I wouldn't turn away a plate of that or a.
Oh, me neither. Me neither. I mean, but it's just something that isn't served down here. I mean, there may be places where you can get it, but not like up in Canada where it's everywhere. Okay, Jamie says, I think he's got the last word. Poutine was invented in the UK, not Canada. Hashtag facts. I won't argue that with you. I
Are
don't
you
know.
are you kidding? Wait a second.
I can't.
I have to
I'm
fact
gonna, I'm
check
gonna, I'm gonna, I'm
Jamie.
gonna.
Was poutine invented in the UK?
That's why it has a.
Poutine, a Canadian dish made of French fries topped with cheese curds and gravy. It first appeared in 1950s rural Quebec snack bars and was widely popularized across Canada and beyond in the 1900s. However, let's look at a secondary. Quintessential Canadian classics like butter tarts, back bacon, and most notably poutine can be found far and wide. 7 years ago this weekend, authentic poutine made its official debut in London, England. So no, I think it was a Canadian chef, Paul Duntis, that brought it to. Is poutine French or English? Here's another
It's
one.
French.
Yeah, it's French, JP. It's French.
Well, but that doesn't mean anything because what we call a zucchini here, they call a courgette, which is the French name. What we call an eggplant, they call an aubergine, which is the French name. So just because it's French doesn't mean that it's not used there all the time. So
Yeah, yeah. That Well, at least, but you guys have more castles and the Beatles, and so there's that.
Steve says poutine is French for yuck. Yeah, but Steve, you don't like anything that's good.
Well, Steve does have a strange palate where he has
Well,
his
no,
specific choices.
I wouldn't say it's strange. I just say it was very, very
Picky,
selective. Very picky,
selective.
very selective.
Yeah,
So,
and there's people like that. Look, there's people like that, and we all can't have the same. Some people have different taste reactions to certain things. You throw like you throw out liver, like
mhm.
cooked fried liver or something, and half the population is going to say no way
Yeah,
right off
I
the
don't
bat.
I don't like liver either. I'm one of those people. I don't like liver.
Yeah,
Yeah, yes. What you call an aubergine, we call an eggplant. Yes, and what you call a swede, we call a rutabaga. So,
and
and that
what do they call a ham sandwich over there?
a ham sandwich. I don't know. They may have some fancy name for it. I don't know. But the one that mystifies them, and I think they miss the point in it. The one that mystifies folks over in the UK, every one of them that I've talked to, and except I don't think I've ever asked Jamie about this. They don't understand the appeal of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Wait a
They
second. When JP was here, he wanted a. Wasn't it you, JP, or somebody else that wanted to take back home a bottle of peanut butter? Was it JP?
I don't know. It
Whatever.
might have been, but they can't get that savory and sweet together thing. They don't realize that peanut butter and jelly sandwiches came about because kids would eat them, and it was cheap. You know, peanut butter is cheap source of protein, and grape kids love grape jelly. In fact, kids are usually, I'm not going to say the only ones that love grape jelly, but most adults don't eat PB&J. Some do, but most adults don't. It's a kid's thing. It was a cheap sandwich that you knew your kid would eat,
I love
and
them.
they would love the heck out of it. Oh
I
yeah.
still like them.
Oh
I'll
yeah.
still have one. I don't have a
Right.
problem with
Oh no, I don't have a problem with it either. But how many PB&Js have you had this year, would you say?
none.
There you go. When you were 6, could you imagine going more than a week without one? I couldn't. I wanted it. That's what I want. I wanted peanut butter and jelly. Save your ham, save your salami. I don't want to hear about bologna. Give me PB&J, but I wanted strawberry jam. I didn't want grape.
Last thing I'll say now that you're talking about food. Did you find it weird in school growing up? I don't know if you had the same experience. I'm assuming that the lunch menu was
Mhm.
roughly within the scope of the same thing.
Mhm.
But we would have our meal in the cafeteria, which they'd get you your plate of whatever it might be,
Mhm.
pasta or whatever item, and then you'd have a little box of milk.
Mhm. A little carton of milk, yeah.
Today, if I were to sit down with a meal, my last drink of choice would be a tall glass of milk with the meal. It
Mhm.
makes no sense to me today as an adult to
Mhm.
mix milk with my meal. To me, it's either water or some sort of,
Yeah.
refreshing beverage. But milk plus your meal, it's like, ugh, I don't
Well,
know.
they weren't going to give kids soda with caffeine in it because there was still, I can remember as a kid, there was still that, oh no, that'll rot your teeth. My grandmother used to tell me, don't drink Coke or Pepsi because it'll stain your stomach. And I never understood that. I was like, so, you know, that was just her way of saying, kids, no, you shouldn't have soda because I think it was because of the caffeine. But
Yeah,
there was that whole big thing of it'll rot your teeth.
yeah,
But the other reason for milk was the calcium and vitamin D.
yeah.
And that's where most people get vitamin D from is from milk or dairy products.
But as
Just
an
like
adult,
it's just like iodized salt. That's where most people get iodine that you need. It's an essential thing to your body. So they put it with salt because most folks put salt on their food.
but as an adult, have you recently? I mean, if you do, you do with whatever meal, whether
No,
going out or yeah, it doesn't.
no,
And but it would be your last. It doesn't even cross your mind,
no.
right?
Linda buys milk for cooking or baking. Um, I can't even tell you the last time I had a bowl of cereal. I just don't think that way anymore. I just it doesn't,
Mhm.
But I went through a stage there a couple years ago. I was buying Cocoa Pebbles all the time, and I would eat a couple bowls of cereal. But it's been a few years. We just don't buy milk to drink. We have other things that we drink with dinner,
Yeah.
you know.
All right.
So,
What do you think? Should we? Because I mean, we've done.
well, it's
We've,
been almost 2 hours. So, and we've gone around the world and
yeah.
philosophically as well as physically. So,
Yeah, we did. We
okay.
took a couple of journeys there, Mark.
Okay, Jamie's got a question I do want to answer because a lot of folks do have that. When you say jelly, he says, is that like our jam with or without seeds? Here we have different, we make the differentiation, okay? Jam is crushed fruit with the seeds
Chunks.
and the pulp and everything else in it, and a little bit of pectin and some sugar in it, and it's just the same kind of jam you have, but it's made from crushed fruit. And then jelly is made from just the juice, all the seeds and all the pulp and everything else is strained out
Coagulated.
of it, and they put more pectin in it, so it's not as easily spread as a jam is. It will hold a shape, and it kind of looks like the gelatin that you're talking about, but it's much thinner. It's not as firm as gelatin.
Yeah.
Then we have preserves, and preserves are usually made with chopped or cut up fruit, like apple preserves or peach or pear preserves, things like that. It's more or less the same thing. It's just how it's prepared.
Mhm.
So Um, other than that, it's all basically the same thing. See, what we call Jello over here, they call jelly. It was a brand name, and jelly is short for gelatin, so that's what they
Oh,
know it
so
as.
so when so so JP was thinking Jello plus
Right.
peanut butter, and he's thinking that sounds gross.
Yes. It is weird. And there I would agree with you. I would agree with you 100%,
Well, yeah, if it's
Jamie.
that, it would
But
taste
we call it Jello, which is a brand name, and that has become just basically like when you guys say Hoover, you mean any kind of vacuum cleaner. You know, did you got a Hoover? Yes. What brand did you get? Dyson. You know,
that's
that
who.
makes sense to them.
Okay,
And it's kind of like, did you get Jello? Yes. What brand did you get? Oh, I bought the store brand. Okay. You didn't actually buy Jello. You bought the store brand of
gelatin,
gelatin, but you
gelatin.
know what we mean. It's just like every facial tissue for blowing your nose or what have you. We call it a Kleenex because that's the most popular brand.
Or a tissue, you
So,
could say.
or yeah, some people will call it a tissue, but if you say to somebody, "Have you got a Kleenex?" They know exactly what you mean, and they'll
Oh
hand
yeah,
it to you.
yeah.
You know.
And isn't that funny? That, and I know we've said this before, but isn't that funny, Mark? That that holds true
Hmm.
in large part. There's always an escape route, but that holds true what you just said across the country from east to west.
Yeah.
It saturates the whole. It's verbal cues that, for the most part, most people understand. It's amazing.
Hmm.
I mean, amazing in respect to someone in New York will understand something
Yeah.
that specific thing as just like someone in San Diego or whatever.
Exactly.
It's very
You may have different names for everything else.
but there's
But if I say get on the escalator, you know exactly what I mean.
100%.
But even that escalator used to be a brand name. Nylon was a brand name. If you went to get some clear cellophane tape to wrap a package, would you call that Scotch tape?
Yeah,
That's a brand name. It may or may not be Scotch. It may be the
right,
store brand,
right.
but we call it Scotch tape. And if I say Scotch tape, you know exactly what I mean.
Yeah,
So,
it's so true.
mhm.
But the cool,
Plexiglass. Plexiglass is a brand name.
everybody knows what that. But it's
But in the UK, it's Perspex. That's a brand name. It's
the
the
amazing
same stuff. But
the amazing part of that to me. There's many amazing things. Is that I mentioned that anyone across. I mean, you could go Minnesota to frickin' like Texas
hmm
to whatever. People know the variation,
hmm yeah.
even though there's probably things that people might say, What did you just say?"
Well,
There are situations like that, but I mean,
you go down and you buy a fizzy drink. What do you call it?
a soda,
Okay. I do too. But there are various regions where they'll call it a pop or a Coke or a soda pop. But if you use those words in any region, any of those words, people know what you mean,
yeah.
even
I
though
mean,
they may not use it themselves. If somebody asked you for a bottle of pop, you'd know exactly what they meant,
yeah.
even though you don't use that yourself.
Oh, dude, I gotta, dude. This lands it right on the. You can, dude. I have to share this thing. I saw. So there was a lady that moved from one state to the other, and she went to I forget what store to get some sort of registration of something or other. Oh, it was some sort of social security thing, a governmental thing. She moved from one state to the other. She went into this new state of hers and went into that store or office or whatever, and she was asked to produce her identification. And she produced her driver's license from her previous state.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady said, attending to her, said,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, we need a valid U.S. identification."
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "Well, this is from my state." Says, ma'am, no, we need a valid United States license. That's not from here. This is, my state is part of the union. The lady
Mm-hmm.
did not know that. Amazing.
As bad as that sounds, Eloy, just remember she has the job. There were people that interviewed for the job that didn't get it. No matter how bad you think an employee is, remember they were not the only one that interviewed for the job. They were the best one that interviewed for that position. There were people worse than her that didn't get the job.
Amazing.
I know it's crazy.
So that I mean that just
Yeah.
I
All
mean
right,
you
we gotta
gotta
get. Yeah, I know. We got to get out of here. It's been 2 hours.
okay. So listen, folks, we hope you enjoyed it. We had a good time. We talked a little bit about this, a little bit about that. We go live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific time here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. We also have a channel or page over on Facebook by the same name. And we have a website where you can catch our past episodes. There's a button called the Wayback Machine button. And on there you can catch our audio episodes. I think they climb up into the 150s or
we
160s.
episode 180.
180. Okay, so we have 200 there, and you can drop those in your podcatcher and enjoy that at your discretion. So we want to thank you. We're also sponsored by
Harneo Media, the man who's been posting all of this fun and frivolity, who is now down to business. That's our buddy Steve Nealon. If you're looking to create a web presence, if you have a web presence but maybe would like to increase it, maybe you want a little bit better marketing, you want some logo design or something like that. Hey, if you're looking for a print on demand service, you want to design up some merch and get some merch in a web store up on your website, Harneo Media will take care of you. They specialize in that kind of thing. Very, very reasonable prices and personalized service. You are dealing with Steve, not some nameless, faceless entity in a tech center somewhere. That's Harneo Media. Look him up at harneomedia.com. That's HARNEAL media.com. Sponsor of trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
All right. Well, listen, thank you guys for hanging out. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time. Have a safe and enjoyable weekend, and really either ponder all the small little things or enjoy the big things and not worry about the little things. It's up to you to decide. I think that, and remember, luck is what we defined it as this evening. So
and luck is what you make of it.
we wish you all good things always. We'll catch you next time. See ya.
Peace.